After reading this book, let me show you this one. I genuinely thought about going to Switzerland, go straight into the mountains, try to find a bear and fight it, because it was that inspirational. But Odysseus had something to fight for. He had something in the core of his being that was worth it. And that is what I want to talk about today. Because our generation, buddy, we don't have much to fight for, so we get blackpilled. Let me put this here. Let me explain. So, if you read the Odysseus, or if you haven't, let me shortly, briefly explain what's going on there. So this guy gets stuck after the war, after the Trojan War. He goes through all these realms, and he gets stuck on an island with the goddess, and he is there crying every day, thinking about his wife and his kingdom and his kid. And he waits for, like, I believe it was like 17 years or less or more, something like that, to get a chance from Zeus and Athene, or Athene, I don't know how you pronounce it, to go back, or try to go back, to his kingdom of Ithaca. I think it's pronounced Ithaca. However it might be, the details don't really matter here, because it is the meaning and the story behind it what makes this book so inspirational, and what made me think about this book on a deeper level, and how it just doesn't reflect anymore in today's society, because it doesn't relate to like 99% of people, including me. But I try to understand it and try to put myself in his shoes, and if I was him, I would have done the same thing. So he went through all these parts of the world, he went through all this suffering, he fought all these monsters to go back to his kingdom. His kingdom being wife, kid, the palace, and all of that. But would have Odysseus given up if he was trying to do this today? That's the question. That's the golden question. Because if he was an average man, or even slightly above average man, what is there to drive you, to give you this drive, to give you this much motivation, to inspire you this badly, to last that long, and to fight that long, to go back to where you belong? That rhyme, by the way. We are very effed up in a way, because a lot of these motives have been taken from us. A lot of guys today become nihilistic because they have nobody to come back home to. They have no wife, they have no kids. They don't have the drive because there's nobody to fight for. Again, no wife, no kids. There is no land to defend. This is a good one as well. Guys don't want to join the military. Of course they don't want to join the military. They're literally scammed. They have no property. Like, you cannot buy property in the West right now, in the most countries of the West. We talked about this issue a little bit in a previous video, but this is the reality. We have no land. We own no land. Like, why should I fight for a place that I'm renting? You know what I mean? This makes sense, right? I'm renting a place. And if shit hits the fan, I might as well just travel somewhere else and rent there. I don't have anything deeper, anything meaningful connecting me to the place where I am right now. And Odysseus had it. He had his palace, bro. He had a freaking palace, bro. Imagine having a palace and then fighting for decades to go back there again. And to hug your wife and see your kid all grown up. That's some cool shit. And this is the story. This is why this book is so inspirational. And this is why this book is so relatable, but unrelatable in the same time to young men, because young men understand the weight of these things. They understand why he went through all of that, and they would do the same if they were in his shoes, because this guy had everything to fight for. He had nothing going against him. Like, if he would have died, sure, whatever happens, but if he won, he would have won the world back. But now if you go into a fight, if you die, game over. If you don't, you go back doing what? Renting another place and getting another 9 to 5? Like, that's it. And you have nobody to be with at that same rented place, and you hate everybody in your 9 to 5. You know what I mean? This is fundamentally what made and is still making man withdraw from society, because there is nothing for them to fight here. There's not a bigger thing. There is nothing to win here, Bo. If you have nothing to win, then why would you fight? You might as well play your video games, or you might as well, goon and cope and ask Grok what to eat for breakfast. Ridiculous. There is something very deep in us that makes us absolutely love this story. But there is also something bitter that makes you really think and almost like feel defeated. Because Odyssey wasn't a god. Like, he was a dude, sure, he was like the shepherd of his folk, that's how they called him. But he was not a billionaire in the time of ancient Greece. He was none of that. He was just a regular strong dude holding his people together, having a community, another big one, having a kid and a wife. These are the intrinsic things that motivate every man to go outside and fight. Is that is he fighting in a war? Is he fighting to earn more money? Is he fighting for status or property or whatever he's fighting for? Doesn't really even matter, because he has the reason, and that is what makes him want to fight. The reason is the biggest one. But if you don't have that, and most of the people don't have that right now, they don't want to fight, they have no reason to fight. The lost community is another one. If you have no community to go back to, if you don't have somebody else who is inspiring you, who is motivating you, who is worth dying for, if you don't have that person, if you don't have that person in a community which is even on a bigger scale than just an individual person, like a family member, for example, you're even more doomed in a way, because the community is really the most complex, the most beautiful thing a human has ever built. Having a full-blown community gives you every possible reason to live, to fight for. That's such a beautiful thing. And this is the thing that, sure, like the soldiers in World War I and II were brainwashed by all kinds of propagandas to engage into the war, and we all know how it all went down, and we all know that it was a pretty bad thing. The silent generation, it was not great for them, don't get me wrong, but they had a reason to go there on the battlefield. They had a reason to put up their helmet, to put on their helmet, sorry, and go and try to withstand their ground. But they had the reason, man. They had the reason. And right now, like, people think, you know, retrospectively, you know, why would they fight? Why were they so stupid? Why would somebody fight, you know, in a world war when they knew they're gonna die and blah blah, you know? Because they had a reason. Now you don't have a reason. You can't even understand their position. You cannot understand something they had 100 years ago because now you don't have it anymore. The community in the West has been dissolving for years and it's only getting worse. People are so individualized. They're like cones, you know, they're like cocks, and most of them don't have anything to fight for. The society has given them no reason to go out there. That is why I think another world war will probably not even happen, because there's literally nobody willing to do that shit. We all feel we're all in the same place. That's why it feels like a scam right now. That's why people seem so intelligent at once, like, oh, why would I fight? And then you're like, sure, people have learned, you know, people have learned their lesson. The humanity has finally learned its lesson to not indulge in another crazy world war. It seems like we understood it now, like we're like finally there. We're on a high intellectual scale right now, but are we on another intellectual scale, or are we just, or is just our reason taken away? Because if people had more kids, if the demography was better, and if the birth rates were higher, and if the communities around the West have been still flourishing and well, I think people would have still accepted that invitation to go there to fight for their community, for their countries, for their families, their houses, their properties, if the economy was better, right? And if people actually own their shit. It's so disencourages, like you're just, there's no reason given for you. You have exactly the opposite of what Odyssey had and what the silent generation had prior to the World War One or two, or whatever you want to say. That's why it seems like nobody is willing to go out there and fight for his place. And before somebody goes crazy in the comments, no, I don't want a war. I don't like the concept of a war. I don't want any conflict, and I'm not encouraging such behavior. I hate it. I hope never ever in the future it ever happens. But I'm just stating the obvious here. I'm stating something that most people don't have the guts to. You know, I'm saying what is the reality right now. This video was all over the place, but I think the message can be easily extracted if you look around, if you read the Odysseus, and if you look just how everything was set up, how epic this poem was, how big of a reward was waiting for him if he had gotten the victory, and he won at the end, so he got all his rewards. But if you do the same right now, the only reward you can get probably is to rent another place in a little bit more safe area, I guess. And that's all. So yeah, man, stay safe out there. I love you all.